So my story was I never wanted to own a law firm, but I was a 2x software founder, like 6x business founder in my 10 years of my professional career. I've been in-house at a number of startups and companies that had either raised money or sold to private equity. And I've been through those processes. I launched my own company. I worked at a large law firm myself. I got that, training and experience of working at a large law firm. And I'm so entrepreneurial, and I totally got my butt kicked as a software entrepreneur. And so as I was reeling from these like losses that were pretty hurtful, almost to my spirit and soul, if anyone out there has ever started a business and had it not work out the way that you want it to, and it actually works out for the worst, they know what I'm talking about.
Welcome back to another episode of the Law Firm Success Story. Now, today we're talking to a law firm owner that started his law firm and in a very short amount of time served a enormous amount of clients. Now, we know you got to have processes, you got to have reputation. There's a lot that goes into it. So we're going to dive into Omeed's story. So stay tuned for today's episode. Omeed Tabiei, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me. What a cool intro. I love that intro.
Well, thanks, man. We've had a lot of fun, just filming wherever we go. And as you saw, there's some I guess world wonders or landmarks in there. We just had some fun filming around the world over the last few years.
Yeah, you do a lot of cool stuff. I've seen your posts of you traveling. So yeah, it's awesome. Love it.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, today we want to talk about the cool stuff that you've been up to. I mean, with being able to serve, that many clients in such a short time frame, because I think there are we work with a lot of law firms, and I will tell you, being able to figure out your processes, all the behind the scenes stuff that allows you to successfully serve that many clients that quick, it is not a very common thing. So before we jump into the details of how that all happened, tell us a little bit of background about your firm.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the managing partner of Optimus Legal. I started the firm about 2 years ago. And actually, I never wanted to start a law firm. That was never my goal. That was never my intention. In fact, I thought quite the opposite. I always was I never wanted to do the partner track thing where I was I'll, give up, 20 years of my life and work 80-hour weeks, 100-hour weeks, just to work myself up to the top of the food chain so I could make a couple $1,000,000 as a partner of, some big law firm. That was never what I wanted to do. And starting a law firm, I think, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, not many people, it wasn't that popular, I think. I think it's only really becoming more popular. I mean, there's always been that kind of, I live in Ohio, and I lived in a small town, Mason, Ohio, outside of Cincinnati, about 35 minutes. And you always have, those lawyers that hung up their own shingles, and you'll see them with their physical location when you're driving in the middle of, the cornfields, and some lawyer has their little law firm right there, right? And they probably serve the neighborhood, and they do DUIs, and they do general practice, and they do divorce, and they do wills, and they kind of are a one-stop shop as a lawyer, that kind of, that small town local lawyer. I think we definitely saw a lot of those, but in the last 5 to 10 years, I think solo firm ownership, small law firm ownership is really taking off. And that's why we're seeing platforms like Clio and My Case and Locus and Lawmatics and kind of all these different platforms that are emerging and becoming billion-dollar companies because they're servicing the small law firm industry, which is just emerging.
Yeah.
So my story was I never wanted to own a law firm, but I was a 2x software founder, 6x business founder in my 10 years of my professional career. I've been in-house at a number of startups and companies that had either raised money or sold to private equity. And I've been through those processes. I'd launched my own company. I worked at a large law firm myself. I got that, training and experience of working at a large law firm. And I'm so entrepreneurial, and I totally got my butt kicked as a software entrepreneur. And so as I was reeling from these losses that were pretty hurtful, like almost to my spirit and soul. If anyone out there has ever started a business and had it not work out the way that you want it to, and it actually works out for the worst, they know what I'm talking about. So I was kind of like healing from this process of having to shut these babies down, essentially, that I like loved so much and I cared about so much. And I was like so optimistic about, and I was like so hopeful about, but I needed a way to make money. So, it essentially came about like a lot of my business ideas do. A friend of mine who I knew for a long time, who was a fellow lawyer, and we had a lot of aligned interests and values and visions and that sort of thing. One day we were talking, it seemed exciting. We launched it, and then the coolest thing that has probably ever happened in my business career happened, which like in the first year of business, we just like exploded. And I have to this day, I'm like, I've never experienced anything like that before. Like I said, I've launched probably like 6 or 7 businesses, 2 of them being software businesses. But yeah, the law firm like came out of the gate and just blew up. And I was like, okay, like, cool. This is cool.
So I'm curious, when something happens that fast, I've seen this from, different types of businesses where they grow faster than they probably could have.
Yes, that 100% happened.
So I guess like it's almost like this fire hose of success is coming your way.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm sure it made you stumble for a little bit, but how did you get your bearings to say, all right, the success is here. Let's speed up getting ready to really, how do we make the most of this?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say we didn't, to be honest. I learned, despite the fact that sometimes I feel like I've read every business book under the sun, and I've taken every business course and program under the sun, because I'm like super into personal development. So I'm like always working with coaches and going to retreats and, doing masterminds and that sort of thing. So I thought I was ready, I was like, all right, we got this, but no, I mean, I think running a business requires really like things to break, and then you have to go and kind of fix them to an extent. I think, not across the board. I'm sure you would feel differently as an accountant. You're like, no, like don't break your systems, like fix them right from the beginning. But something like scaling your business, I think it's more difficult to anticipate, okay, there's this many clients now, we're doing 20 deals at one time. I'm overloaded. My business partner is overloaded. How do we manage like just client communications alone, for example, in terms of the number of clients that are expecting responses from us? And yeah, we had to kind of learn the hard way in terms of, clients churning out and us being like, okay, what did we do wrong? What can we do better? How can we, address these sorts of things that we noticed? Like if you're building a plumbing system, here's a leak. How do we plug this leak? How do we anticipate the leaks moving forward? But it really has been a lesson of like, yeah, it was like a lot of excitement. Like the roller coaster was like, woo. And then it's like, oh man, like, oh God, this hurts. Like this hurts so bad.
I think that's so many people who've ever started a business. And I think, especially like I said, we work with a lot of law firms. And I think, very few have that experience where like, hey, the success just rushed in. But I think it's very, very important what you said about that sometimes you got to figure out where the holes are, where the gaps are, where things, broke, and then you got to go in and fix it. So how has it been going back in and now repairing some of those leaks and, probably rebuilding parts of the process or parts of the business? Like, how has that journey been?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said like a big buzzword for me, which it has felt like in the second year of business, I've had to like rebuild the business. So that buzzword that you said, rebuild, it really has been like going in and rebuilding the business. I think the second year of business for me was harder than the first year, because the first year was like so exciting, where it was like, oh my God, like this is amazing. It felt like we were, digging for oil and we struck oil. And now it's like, oh God, now we got to like figure out, how to collect the oil, how to process the oil, how to price the oil, how to, manufacture it. Like what aspects of it do we want to deal with? What aspects do we not want to deal with? Who are our favorite clients that we like working with? What are their characteristics? How do we get more of those people? How do we anticipate who the clients that we want to work with are, and who are the clients that we don't necessarily want to work with that end up becoming, more problematic clients? And a lot of it is a lot of introspection and self-reflection. And I would actually say that some of the biggest lessons that have come from rebuilding the business in the second year really have been, I think a lot of the places that the business broke were either places that I was like unwilling to like look at or address, or, I was like, okay, I really like these aspects of the business, but I don't really like these aspects of the business. So I'm kind of just going to like ignore those problems until I can't anymore, where I'm like realizing like, oh no, like I have to do this thing because no one else is going to do it. And then there's like, I think mindset is so important in business. And so for me, it actually really has been doing the internal work of recognizing where I have like my own resistance in the business and my own unwillingness to address those aspects of the business, and working on those things and fixing mindset. And which I think like you can't rush that. You can't rush that process.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, that sounds like what I would say is a very mature perspective when it comes down to entrepreneurship, because I mean, I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs over the years, and what I will say is a common trait are the ones who have experienced, phenomenal levels of success. And when I ask them about advice that they would have for themselves if they look back in time, that was one of the things that they talked about, was like that, personal development and that growth, and like growing as the person who is running the business, and not only just trying to focus on how do I grow this business? How do I grow this business? And so I'm curious for you is, what are some of the places that you've gone, or what are some of the retreats or the books that you've read or things that you've done to really mature in that aspect?
God. Okay, so I can tell you actually like a recent story. As a Man Thinketh is the most recent book that I read. And I never would have thought that book would have had like such an impact on me, because it's like quite out there. I don't know. Have you ever read it?
I have. I've read it multiple times. It's a very, I call it, it's a very mighty small package.
Yes. Well, I got the one that comes with Poverty to Power as well. So the book is both As a Man Thinketh, because it's so like thin, right? As a Man Thinketh is like 100 pages or something, but Poverty to Power is like more like 200. And they come as a package if you buy them on Amazon. And As a Man Thinketh definitely shifted my mindset, but I would say Poverty to Power is really what got me there. And specifically, again, like you're just like nailing the topics, Terrell, like because the problem was that my mindset was, I want to grow my business. I want to grow my business. And I kept comparing it to the first year in business. And what ended up happening was like I kept falling into this state of bitterness, where I would be like, my business isn't growing the way that I want it to. Like, how can I grow my business? And I became like obsessed with growing my business. But what ended up happening was when I read As a Man Thinketh and From Poverty to Power, especially Poverty to Power, what he talks about is how important it is to remain in the selfless state. That a state of love is selflessness, to detach from the state of selfishness. And I want to grow my business is a very selfish mind state to be in. It's not staying connected to the reason why we do what we do. the reason why I do what I do. The reason why I do what I do is because I have been a founder myself and I've experienced failure time and time again as a business owner. So how rewarding is it for me to be alongside entrepreneurs and founders to help them navigate the landmines and to help support them in their journeys of success? It's very rewarding because I get to see other people win in ways that I didn't get to.
Nice. You know, I think that is such a powerful perspective. And I mean, I think that that's amazing that people can experience that and people can learn from so many others. And I want to be respectful of your time. So I know we could probably go into even more depth, but what I want to do for people is, if they're interested in learning more about your firm or yourself, if there's anything that you're posting online or on social media, like, where can they find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best place to connect with me. I'm super active over on LinkedIn, but I'm on all the social platforms. So you can find me on Facebook and Instagram, and I post there like pretty regularly too. But I would say LinkedIn is the best place to connect with me.
Awesome. I love it. So thank you for coming on. Thank you for being amazing. Thank you for sharing the insight. And I really want people to go, connect with you on LinkedIn. And because I will say the journey that you're on, I think it's so relatable to so many people, to where people may say, well, I didn't have success right away, but it's like the journey you've been on since is very similar to what all of us must go through. So,
yes.
Hey, thank you so much for coming on, Omeed.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Law Firm and Finance Show, where we give you great content that helps you build a more successful law firm. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on all platforms and follow us for more content.